The morning light touched the crystal towers of Thessia Prime like gentle fingers. Captain Zara stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, watching her beautiful world spin slowly below. The twin suns painted everything in soft gold and blue colors. Her people lived in peace here. They had always lived in peace. War was something they read about in old books, not something real. Zara was tall and thin like all her people. Her skin was pale blue and her eyes were large and kind. She wore the simple white uniform of the Kalari Space Service. There were no weapons on her ship. There were no weapons anywhere in their system. The Kalari had never needed them. The communication panel started beeping. Keth, her young officer, looked up from his station. His face was worried. "Captain, we have ships approaching from the outer system. Many ships." Zara walked over to look at the display screen. What she saw made her heart stop. Hundreds of dark shapes were moving toward their world. The ships were huge and black. They looked like giant insects with sharp edges and glowing red lights. She had never seen anything like them. "Who are they?" she asked. Her voice was quiet. Keth worked at his controls. His hands were shaking. "The computer says they are Zenthari ships. Captain, there are stories about the Zenthari. Bad stories." Zara knew the stories too. Every peaceful species in the galaxy knew about the Zenthari Dominion. They were the nightmare that parents used to scare their children. They came from the dark space between stars. They destroyed worlds and took prisoners as slaves. They killed anyone who fought back and sometimes killed those who did not fight at all. "How many ships?" Zara asked. "Over 300. They will be here in 6 hours. Zara closed her eyes. 300 warships against a world with no defenses. It would not be a battle. It would be murder. She thought about her people below. Families having breakfast, children playing in the gardens, old people sitting in the sunshine. They had no idea what was coming. "Send a message to all ships in the fleet," she said. "Tell them to surrender immediately when the Zenthari arrive. Do not fight. Our people must live." But even as she said it, Zara knew it would not matter. The Zenthari did not care about surrender. They took what they wanted and destroyed the rest. Her beautiful world would become a dead rock floating in space. Keth looked up at her. "Captain, should we send a distress signal?" "To who?" Zara asked sadly. "Who would help us against the Zenthari? Who would be brave enough or strong enough?" "The humans," Keth said quietly. Zara stared at him. The humans were another story parents told children, but these were different stories. The humans came from a death world called Earth, a place so dangerous that it created the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Other aliens whispered that humans were born warriors, that they fought wars like other species breathed air. "The humans are far away," Zara said, "and they might not care about us." "But they might," Keth said. "The stories say they protect innocent people. Maybe the stories are true." Zara looked at the display again. The Zenthari fleet was getting closer. She could see the details now. The ships had weapons everywhere, guns and missile tubes and energy cannons. They were built only for killing. "Do it," she said. "Send the distress signal on all frequencies. Tell anyone who will listen that we need help." Keth worked quickly at his station. His fingers flew over the controls. "Signal is broadcasting, Captain. I am telling them about our situation. I am asking for immediate help." The signal raced through space at the speed of light. It carried the desperate voice of a peaceful people facing destruction. Most species would ignore it. Fighting the Zenthari meant death. but the signal reached the edge of human space where Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was working the night shift at Monitoring Station Delta 7. Jake was a big man with short brown hair and serious eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and had scars to prove it. When the alien distress signal came through his computers, he read it twice to make sure he understood. Then he got angry. The message was simple. A peaceful world was about to be attacked by the Zenthari. 68 million. Innocent people were going to die. The Kalari had no weapons and no way to fight back. They were begging anyone who would listen to help them. Jake looked at the clock. The attack would begin in 5 hours. He grabbed his communication device and called Terra Command on Luna Base. Admiral Katie Sullivan answered on the first ring. "Admiral, we have a Priority 1 emergency," Jake said. "The Zenthari are attacking a peaceful system. 68 million civilians are going to die." Sullivan was quiet for a moment. Jake could hear her thinking. Finally, she spoke. "Send me everything." "You have, Commander." "I will wake up the Fleet Council." Jake transmitted all the data about the Kalari system and the approaching Zenthari fleet. Then he sat back and waited. He knew what would happen next. Humanity did not like bullies. And they really did not like bullies who picked on innocent people. 30 minutes later, red alert sirens began screaming across the Sol system. Every military base from Mercury to Pluto went to full combat status. The message was simple and clear. The Zenthari had made a mistake. They had committed an act of war against innocents while humans were watching. Admiral Sullivan stood in the command center deep under the surface of Luna. Around her, dozens of officers worked at combat stations. The main screen showed the Kalari system and the Zenthari fleet positions. "Status report," Sullivan ordered. Captain Roy Henderson stepped forward. He was the commander of the dreadnought Vengeance and one of the most decorated warriors in human space. "We can have a full battle fleet ready to jump in 4 hours, Admiral." "Not fast enough," Sullivan said. "Those people will be dead by then." Commander Lisa Park spoke up. She was small and quiet, but she commanded the stealth destroyer Silent. Death. "Admiral, we could use the new jump drives. They are not fully tested, but they might get us there in time." Sullivan looked at the display again. The Zenthari ships looked like a plague of metal insects crawling toward a flower. She thought about the peaceful aliens who were about to die. She thought about her oath as a human officer to protect the innocent. "Do it," she said. "Call up every ship we have. Tell them we are going to war." The orders went out across human space. Warships that had been on patrol or training exercises turned toward the jump points. Crews that had been sleeping or eating dropped everything and ran to battle stations. The entire human war machine began to move with deadly purpose. On Thessia Prime, Zara watched the Zenthari fleet get closer. The dark ships filled her screens now. She could see the weapons charging up. Soon they would begin the bombardment that would kill her world. "Any response to our signal?" she asked. Keth shook his head sadly. "Nothing, Captain. We are alone." But Keth was wrong. Far away in human space, the most dangerous fleet in the galaxy was preparing to jump. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship Retribution and looked at her officers. These were men and women who had been forged in the fires of humanity's violent past. They were the children of a world that tried to kill them every day for millions of years. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sullivan said quietly, "we are about to show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens innocence while humans are watching." Admiral Sullivan walked into the war room beneath Luna Base with quick steps. The room was filled with holographic displays showing star maps and ship positions. Around the central table sat the best military minds in human space. These were the people who would lead humanity into battle against the Zenthari. Captain Roy Henderson stood when the Admiral entered. His face was covered with scars from old battles. His eyes were hard like steel. Behind him on the display was his ship, the Dreadnought Vengeance. It was a massive warship built like a flying fortress. Its hull was black metal covered with weapon turrets. Commander Lisa Park was smaller than the others, but just as dangerous. She had short black hair and moved like a cat. Her ship Silent Death was built for stealth attacks. It could appear behind enemy lines without being seen and destroy targets before they knew what hit them. Captain Danny O'Brien commanded the assault carrier Hammer of Justice. He was a big man with red hair and a loud voice. His ship carried 300 of humanity's best Marines. These were soldiers trained to fight in space and on hostile worlds. They were feared across the galaxy. "Report," Sullivan said as she took her place at the head of the table. Henderson spoke first. "We have assembled the largest battle fleet in human history, Admiral. 12 dreadnoughts including Vengeance, 36 destroyers for fast attack and escort duty, 48 frigates for support operations, 6 assault carriers loaded with Marines and fighters." Park added quietly. "We also have the new experimental weapon platforms, the ones from the Black Projects. Command has authorized their use for this mission." Sullivan nodded. She knew about the experimental weapons. They were based on technology that other species considered too dangerous to build. Only humans were crazy enough to mount weapons that could crack planets on their warships. "What about the enemy?" she asked. The display changed to show the Zenthari fleet. The alien ships looked like living creatures made of metal and bone. They were bioorganic vessels that grew instead of being built. Each one was unique, but all of them were designed for one purpose: destroying other civilizations. "Intelligence estimates 312 Zenthari vessels," Henderson said. "They have us outnumbered 3-1. Their ships are larger than ours on average. But they have never fought humans before." O'Brien laughed. It was not a nice sound. "Let them come. My Marines have been looking for a real fight. These bug ships will find out why humans are called Deathworlders." Sullivan studied the tactical display. The Zenthari had overwhelming numbers. Their ships were powerful. But they had made one critical mistake. They had threatened innocent people while humans were watching. That changed everything. "Gentleman and lady," Sullivan said, "the Zenthari think they understand warfare. They conquer through numbers and intimidation. They have never faced an enemy that refuses to be intimidated. They are about to learn why Earth is called a death world." The Admiral touched a control, and the display showed Earth. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from space, but Sullivan and her officers knew the truth. Earth was the most dangerous world in the galaxy. It had oceans full of monsters, land covered with predators, weather that could kill, diseases that destroyed civilizations, gravity that crushed weaker species. "Our world tried to kill us for millions of years," Sullivan continued. "It made us into hunters and warriors. We learned to work together or die alone. We learned to never give up no matter how bad things got. The Zenthari are about to face the children of that world." Henderson pulled up fleet formations on his display. "What are our orders, Admiral?" "We jumped to the Kalari system in 1 hour," Sullivan said. "When we arrive, we give the Zenthari one chance to withdraw. If they refuse, we destroy them completely. No half measures. No mercy for slavers and murderers." Park leaned forward. Rules of engagement? Total war, Sullivan replied. The Zenthari have shown no mercy to their victims. We will show them none in return. Any ship that fires on civilians or refuses to surrender will be destroyed. The officers around the table nodded. They understood what total war meant. It meant using every weapon humans had developed. It meant fighting not just to win, but to send a message across the galaxy. It meant showing every potential enemy what happened when they threatened innocence. O'Brien cracked his knuckles. The sound was loud in the quiet room. My boys are ready, Admiral. We have been training for this kind of fight our whole lives. The Zenthari picked the wrong species to mess with. Sullivan looked at each of her commanders. These were people who had survived the brutal training of human military academies. They had fought in wars across the galaxy. They had seen what happened when civilized species tried to fight humans. It never ended well for the other side. There is something else, Sullivan said. This battle will be watched by every species in the galaxy. Some of them think humans are too dangerous. Some think we are savages who should be contained. Today we show them what humans really are. We are the species that protects the innocent and punishes the guilty. The display changed to show the assembly point where the human fleet was gathering. Ship after ship appeared from jump space. Each vessel was built for war. Human warships did not try to look peaceful or elegant like those of other species. They looked exactly like what they were, weapons designed to destroy enemies. The dreadnoughts were flying fortresses covered with armor and guns. The destroyers were fast and deadly like space sharks. The frigates were small but packed with advanced technology. The assault carriers were mobile bases that could deploy thousands of fighters and troops. Fleet status? Sullivan asked. Henderson checked his displays. All ships report ready for combat. Weapon systems charged. Marines loaded and equipped. Fighter squadrons fueled and armed. We are ready to jump on your command, Park added. Silent Death and the other stealth ships will jump first. We will gather intelligence and identify priority targets. The main fleet will follow 30 seconds later. Sullivan stood up. The holographic displays showed the peaceful Kalari world where millions of innocent people waited for death or salvation. She thought about her oath as a human officer. She thought about the children playing in alien gardens who would die if the Zenthari were not stopped. Ladies and gentlemen, she said quietly, we are about to write a new chapter in galactic history. The Zenthari have ruled through fear and violence for too long. Today that ends. Today they learn that there is one species in the galaxy they should never have threatened. Today, they meet the Deathworlders. The officers stood and saluted. Then they left to join their ships. In 1 hour, the most powerful fleet humanity had ever assembled would jump across the galaxy to face an enemy that outnumbered them 3-1. But numbers did not matter when humans went to war. What mattered was that innocent people had called for help, and humans always answered that call. Space twisted and screamed as the human fleet materialized at the edge of the Kalari system. Reality bent around their jump drives as over 100 warships appeared in a blaze of twisted light and energy. The emergent signatures were deliberately designed to look as threatening as possible. When humans went to war, they wanted their enemies to know death was coming. On the orbital station above Thessia Prime, Captain Zara stared at her display screens in amazement. One moment space had been empty, except for the approaching Zenthari fleet. The next moment it was filled with new contacts, ships that moved with purpose and discipline, ships that looked like they were built for only one thing, killing. "Captain," Keth called out excitedly, We are receiving a transmission from the new fleet. They identify themselves as the Terran Federation Navy. Zara felt hope for the first time in hours. The humans had come. The Deathworlders had heard their call for help and crossed the galaxy to answer it. She looked at the tactical display and counted the human ships. Just over 100 vessels against more than 300 Zenthari warships. The odds were still terrible, but at least they were not alone anymore. The main screen flickered and came to life. Admiral Sullivan appeared in her black uniform with silver rank insignia. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship was a study in military efficiency. Every person moved with purpose. Every station hummed with barely contained power. This was what a warship looked like when it was ready for battle. "This is Admiral Katie Sullivan of the Terran Federation Navy," the human commander said. Her voice was calm but carried the promise of violence. "To any Zenthari forces in this system, you have 60 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal or we will consider you hostile. This is your only warning." Aboard the Zenthari command ship, Destroyer of Worlds, Supreme Commander Vorth Sek Hadron watched the human fleet with confusion. The Zenthari were massive reptilian beings with scales like armor and claws like knives. They had conquered dozens of star systems through superior numbers and brutal tactics. They had never encountered serious resistance. Vorth stood over 8 feet tall with yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. His uniform was made from the skin of conquered enemies. Around him, his bridge crew worked at stations that looked more like living organisms than machines. Zenthari ships were grown rather than built, and they pulsed with bioelectric energy. "These mammals dare to threaten the Dominion," Vorth hissed to his tactical officer. "How many ships do they have?" 106 vessels, Supreme Commander. Our force consists of 312 ships. They must be insane to challenge us with such inferior numbers. Vorth's mandibles clicked in what passed for Zenthari laughter. "Then we shall educate them about Dominion superiority. Perhaps we will keep some of them alive as examples. All ships, target the human fleet. Show these Deathworlders what happens to those who interfere with our conquest." The Zenthari fleet began to turn toward the humans. Their bioorganic ships moved through space like living creatures. Some looked like giant insects with multiple weapon pods. Others resembled sea monsters, with tentacles that ended in plasma cannons. All of them were designed to inspire terror in their enemies. But as the alien fleet changed course, something unexpected happened. The human ships did not retreat or show any sign of fear. Instead, they began moving into combat formations with mechanical precision. Each vessel knew exactly where it needed to be and moved there without hesitation. Captain Henderson stood on the bridge of his dreadnought Vengeance, watching the enemy fleet approach. His ship was a kilometer long and covered with enough weapons to level a small moon. The crew around him worked quietly and efficiently. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. "All stations report ready for combat." His weapons, officer reported. Lieutenant Carl Tucker was a veteran of the border wars and had personally destroyed 12 enemy ships in previous battles. Main guns charged and locked on target. Henderson opened a fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships, this is Vengeance. You know why we are here. Those people down there cannot fight for themselves. They are counting on us to stand between them and extinction. Make every shot count, for humanity and for justice." Across the human fleet, similar scenes played out on every bridge. Commander Park prepared her stealth destroyer for a surprise attack behind enemy lines. Captain O'Brien readied his fighters and Marines for close combat. Admiral Sullivan coordinated the entire battle plan from her flagship. On Thessia Prime, millions of Kalari watched the sky through telescopes and on viewing screens. They could see the two fleets approaching each other like storm clouds about to collide. Many of them prayed to their ancient gods for protection. Others simply held their children close and waited. Zara continued watching from her orbital station. She had a perfect view of both fleets as they closed the distance between them. The Zenthari ships moved in a loose formation that relied on overwhelming firepower. The human ships moved like parts of a single organism, each one supporting the others. "Captain," Keth said quietly, "the humans are badly outnumbered. Will they really fight for us?" Zara studied the tactical display. The human fleet looked tiny compared to the Zenthari armada, but there was something about the way they moved that gave her hope. These were not the ships of a species that ran from fights. These were the ships of hunters who had found their prey. "Yes," she said softly, "they will fight. The stories say humans never abandon innocent people. Today we will find out if the stories are true." The space between the two fleets continued to shrink. Weapon systems on both sides charged to full power, shields activated, and armor plating locked into position. In a few minutes, this peaceful system would become a battlefield. Admiral Sullivan stood on her bridge, watching the enemy fleet grow, larger on her screens. She thought about the peaceful aliens who were depending on her. She thought about her oath to protect the innocent. She thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of predators. "All ships," she broadcast on. The fleet frequency. "Remember what we fight for today. We are not here for territory or resources. We are here because someone called for help and we answered. We are here because that is what humans do." The first energy signatures appeared on the sensors as both fleets prepared to fire. The battle for Thessia Prime was about to begin. It would be remembered across the galaxy as the day the Deathworlders showed the universe what justice looked like when it came armed with the fury of a species that had crawled up from hell itself. The first exchange of fire lit up the entire star system like a newborn sun. Zenthari plasma bolts streamed through space in brilliant streams of green and red energy. They were designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer volume of fire. But they met something no Zenthari had ever encountered before. Human weapons designed by a species that understood war at the most basic level. Human kinetic rounds screamed through the void at incredible speeds. These were not energy weapons that could be deflected by shields. They were solid chunks of metal moving at significant fractions of light speed. When they hit Zenthari ships, armor that had protected against a dozen different alien weapons simply ceased to exist. Commander Park's stealth destroyer, Silent Death, lived up to its deadly name. Her ship had used advanced stealth technology to position itself behind the Zenthari lines before the battle began. Now she struck like a ghost made of metal and fury. Her antimatter torpedoes began systematically destroying Zenthari command vessels before their crews even knew she was there. "This is silent death to all units," Park reported calmly as explosions bloomed around her position. "Enemy command structure is hierarchical and rigid. Take out the big ships and the smaller ones lose coordination." Her tactical analysis was perfect. As Zenthari command ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, the alien fleet began to lose cohesion. Ships that had moved in perfect formation started to drift apart. Communication networks went silent. The Dominion's greatest strength, their ability to coordinate massive fleets, was being systematically destroyed. Captain O'Brien's assault carrier, Hammer of Justice, launched wave after wave of human fighters and bombers. The pilots were products of humanity's violent history, trained from childhood to fly their craft like extensions of their own bodies. They dove through Zenthari formations with a combination of skill and absolute fearlessness that left the alien crews stunned. The human fighters moved like hunting packs. They would swarm around larger Zenthari vessels, striking weak points with precision weapons before disappearing into the chaos of battle. Each pilot knew exactly what their squadron mates were doing without needing to communicate. They fought like wolves, coordinating their attacks through instinct and training, but it was Captain Henderson's dreadnought vengeance that truly showcased the terrifying nature of human warfare. The massive ship-mounted weapons that other civilized species considered war crimes. Mass drivers that fired depleted uranium slugs at relativistic speeds, fusion bombs that turned sections of space into temporary stars, and the dreaded planet crackers that could split moons in half. "Target their flagship," Henderson ordered his weapons officer. Lieutenant Tucker's hands moved over his controls with practiced ease. "Full spread. Everything we have." The Vengeance opened fire with every weapon system simultaneously. The effect on the Zenthari destroyer of worlds was catastrophic. The bioorganic hull that had withstood the weapons of conquered civilizations simply disintegrated under the human assault. Armor plating vaporized. Weapon systems exploded. The ship's living components screamed and died. Supreme Commander Vorth found himself thrown across his bridge as his flagship bucked and twisted under the incredible firepower. The organic walls around him were burning with chemical fire. His crew was dead or dying at their stations. For the first time in his life, the veteran Zenthari commander felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "Report!" he roared at his surviving officers. "Hull integrity at 20%, came the terrified reply. "Life support failing. Weapons offline. Supreme Commander, we must retreat." But retreat was not possible. The human fleet had anticipated the Zenthari tactics perfectly. Fast destroyers had moved to cut off escape routes. The aliens found themselves trapped in a shrinking pocket of space, while human ships systematically destroyed them. On Thessia Prime, Zara watched in amazement as the human fleet dismantled a force 3 times their size. The humans fought with a coordination and lethality that seemed impossible. Each ship knew exactly what every other ship was doing. They moved like parts of a single deadly organism. "How are they doing this?" Keth whispered, watching human fighters somehow anticipate and counter every Zenthari tactic. Zara understood what she was seeing. They are not just fighting a battle, they are hunting. And that was exactly what was happening. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on their death world. They did not rely on overwhelming strength or superior numbers. They used intelligence, coordination, and relentless pressure to wear down their prey. The Zenthari were discovering what it felt like to be hunted by the apex predators of the galaxy. Admiral Sullivan coordinated the battle from her flagship with calm efficiency. Her officers provided constant updates on fleet positions and enemy casualties. The tactical display showed Zenthari ships dying at an incredible rate. Their formations were broken. Their command structure was shattered. Their morale was collapsing. "Enemy fleet attempting to disengage," reported her tactical officer. "Negative," Sullivan replied coldly. "Pursue and destroy. No Zenthari ship leaves this system. We end this threat here and now." The human fleet pressed their attack with mechanical precision. They had come to deliver justice, and justice demanded that the Zenthari threat be eliminated completely. Ships that tried to flee found themselves cut off by human destroyers. Vessels that attempted to surrender were ignored. The Zenthari had shown no mercy to their victims and would receive none in return. Commander Park's silent death appeared behind another group of fleeing Zenthari ships. Her torpedoes struck without, warning, turning proud warships into expanding clouds of debris. Her voice remained calm as she reported each kill to the fleet. Enemy formation Delta destroyed, moving to intercept formation Echo. Captain O'Brien's Marines were boarding disabled Zenthari vessels, fighting through bioorganic corridors with weapons and tactics that shocked the alien crews. The humans moved through the ships like they were designed for this kind of combat. They used grenades and flamers to clear rooms full of enemies. They showed no fear of the larger, stronger Zenthari warriors. One Marine squad, led by Sergeant Ben Cooper, found themselves facing a group of Zenthari in the engine room of a crippled ship. The aliens were twice the size of the humans and armed, with energy weapons. But Cooper and his men had something the Zenthari did not understand: the absolute certainty that they would win. "For the Kalari!" Cooper shouted as he charged into combat. The firefight was brief and brutal. When it ended, the Marines stood victorious among the bodies of their enemies. They planted charges to destroy the ship's engines and moved on to the next target. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out dozens of times. Human forces were systematically destroying every Zenthari ship in the system. The alien fleet that had terrorized entire sectors was being reduced to scrap metal and corpses. Supreme Commander Vorth tried to comprehend what was happening to his forces. The humans were not just winning, they were dominating. These mammals, from a single world, were destroying the greatest fleet in Dominion history. It was impossible, but it was happening before his eyes. 4 hours after the battle began, the Zenthari Dominion fleet was broken. Ships that had terrorized entire sectors fled in panic as human forces pursued them with relentless efficiency. The bioorganic vessels that once looked so threatening now limped through space-trailing atmosphere and debris. Their formations were shattered, their command structure was destroyed, their will to fight was gone. Supreme Commander Vorth watched his once mighty fleet dissolve around him. His flagship destroyer of worlds was dying. The living hull sections were shutting down one by one. His crew was either dead or had abandoned their stations. Through the burning viewports, he could see human ships moving past like mechanical sharks, hunting down the survivors of his armada. "Supreme Commander," his communications officer called weakly, "the humans are demanding our surrender." Vorth looked at the tactical display one last time. Of his 312 ships, fewer than 30 were still capable of fighting. The humans had lost only 8 vessels in the entire battle. It was the most complete military defeat in Dominion history. "Signal the fleet," Vorth said quietly. "All ships surrender immediately." But even as the Zenthari ships broadcast their surrender signals, the human fleet continued its systematic pursuit. Admiral Sullivan had made it clear that this was not just a battle, it was an execution. The Zenthari had chosen to threaten. Innocents and humans had decided that such behavior would no longer be tolerated in this part of the galaxy. The few Zenthari vessels that managed to escape the immediate battle zone found themselves faced with a choice that no Dominion fleet had ever confronted before. They could continue fleeing and be hunted down across the galaxy by human forces, or they could surrender and face justice for their crimes against peaceful civilizations. Most chose surrender. The alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. Admiral Sullivan's flagship Retribution moved into orbit around Thessia Prime. The massive vessel was scarred from battle but triumphant. Its dark hull and bristling weapons somehow seemed reassuring rather than threatening to the Kalari below. On the surface, millions of people had gathered to watch the sky, seeing their salvation written in the contrails of human fighters performing victory rolls through the atmosphere. "This is Admiral Sullivan to the Kalari government," came the transmission to Zara's orbital station. "The immediate threat has been neutralized. We are deploying humanitarian aid and defensive platforms. You are under the protection of the Terran Federation now." Zara felt tears running down her face as she watched human ships take positions around her world. Medical vessels were already launching shuttles loaded with supplies and doctors. Engineering ships were beginning construction of defense stations that would protect Thessia Prime from future attacks. But the humans were not finished with their message to the galaxy. Captain Henderson's voice crackled across all frequencies, broadcasting not just to the Kalari system, but to every listening post within 50 light years. His words would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. "This is the Terran Federation Navy broadcasting on all frequencies. The Zenthari Dominion has been defeated in this system. To any Zenthari forces receiving this transmission, know that humanity has marked you. We know where your colonies are. We know where your fleets hide. We know where your leaders sleep." The transmission continued with cold precision. "The Kalari are under our protection now. Any further aggression against them or any other peaceful species will be met with the full might of humanity. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us for millions of years. We are the species that looked at the dark between the stars and decided to claim it. We are the Deathworlders, and we have decided that your reign of terror ends today." Across the galaxy, the message was received by dozens of species. Some cheered in secret, finally seeing hope that the Zenthari threat might be ended. Others trembled in fear, realizing that humans were even more dangerous than they had imagined. The political balance of the entire sector shifted in a matter of hours. 3 months later, Zara stood in the newly constructed Terran embassy on Thessia Prime. Through the windows, she could see human engineers working alongside Kalari scientists to build the defensive installations that would protect her world. The two species worked together with surprising ease, sharing knowledge and technology. The humans had kept every promise they made. Not only had they protected the Kalari, but they had actively hunted down Zenthari forces throughout the entire sector. Dominion strongholds that had seemed untouchable for centuries fell to human assault fleets. Slave worlds were liberated. Refugee populations were relocated to safe planets under Terran protection. Commodore Jake Morrison, promoted for his role in detecting the original distress signal, now served as the human liaison to the Kalari government. He joined Zara at the observation deck, carrying a datapad with the latest reports from across the region. "The last Zenthari stronghold in the Outer Rim surrendered yesterday," he reported with satisfaction. "Admiral Sullivan sends her regards, and wants you to know that the threat is completely eliminated." Zara looked up at the big human with wonder. "Why did you help us? You did not know our people. You had no obligation to risk your lives for strangers." Morrison's expression became serious. "Because that is what humans do, Captain. When innocent people call for help, we answer. Our world made us into weapons, but we choose what we point those weapons at, and we have decided that bullies and tyrants make excellent targets." Through the embassy windows, they could see Kalari children playing in gardens that had been rebuilt after the panic of the Zenthari attack. Human soldiers walked among them, no longer seen as frightening aliens but as protectors and friends. The contrast was remarkable. Beings evolved on a death world had become the guardians of peace. As the twin suns set over Thessia Prime, painting, The sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Zara reflected on how much the galaxy had changed. The Zenthari Dominion was broken. Dozens of oppressed species were free. Trade routes that had been terrorized for centuries were now safe. And somewhere in the void, human patrol ships moved silently through space, making sure it stayed that way. The Deathworlders had heard the call for help, and they had answered with justice written in fire across the stars. The galaxy was a safer place because humans had decided that innocent people mattered more than politics or profit. The children of Earth had shown the universe what it truly meant to protect and serve. And in the deep space, listening posts scattered. Across human territory, officers like Jake Morrison continued their watch, waiting for the next call for help that would inevitably come. Because that was what humans did. They listened. They answered. And they made sure that those who preyed on the innocent learned to fear the sound of human ships jumping through space.